very angry, yelling, "I hate you, Lorenzo."
Leave!
Sharon's voice shook
at
as
anyway,
tears
just go!
streamed down her face. "Leave! That's what you're good at anyway. Just go." And he did. He walked out without a word. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed through the room like the end of something that should have lasted forever. That night, everything broke. That night, love turned into pain. That night, I realized even love can destroy the strongest hearts. But it didn't start that way. Lorenzo, 35, Italian, tall, muscular, tattoos crawling up his neck and wrapping around his arms like stories he'd never tell. A man whose silence carried more weight than words. A man who didn't need to shout to be obeyed. People feared him, respected him, moved out of his way when he entered a room. He was power. He was control. And for years, that's all he knew. Until one afternoon, a simple afternoon in Rome, he pushed open the glass door of a boutique, and a soft bell chimed above his head. He wasn't there for anything special, just a shirt before a meeting, business as usual. Then he saw her. It happened instantly. Sharon, 27, Nigerian. Beautiful in a way that stopped time. Her long, tiny box braids fell neatly against her shoulders, the ends brushing her waist. Her smile, soft, unguarded, alive, lit up her face as she spoke to a customer. Her hands moved with care, folding a dress like it was something fragile. And in that moment, Lorenzo felt something he hadn't felt in years. Stillness. The noise in his head went quiet. The tension in his chest eased. His pulse slowed, then quickened again. Not from danger, but from something he didn't understand. He looked at her once, then looked again. And quietly, under his breath, he said to himself, "What a beauty." For a man like Lorenzo, beauty wasn't new. He'd been with women, expensive, loud, dramatic. Women who loved his money, his power, the danger that came with him. But Sharon was different. She wasn't trying to be seen. She wasn't performing for attention. She was just there, present, calm, radiant, and that to him was everything. He forced himself to look away, picked up a shirt, pretended to browse. His face was unreadable, cold, composed, the way it always was. To her, he was just another customer. He bought something small, thanked her politely, and left. But when he got into his car, he didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there, staring through the windshield, his mind replaying the way she smiled, the way her voice sounded when she said, "Thank you, sir." He told himself it was nothing, just attraction, just curiosity. But it wasn't. Something in him shifted that day. He came back, a week later, then again, 3 times in total. Every time, he told himself it was the last. Every time, he walked in pretending to shop, pretending to browse. When in reality, he just wanted to see her again. She always greeted him the same way. Polite, warm, unaware. "Good afternoon, sir. Let me know if you need any help." Her voice hit him harder than he'd ever admit. For Sharon, he was just another serious man who shopped often. The kind of man who wore nice suits, smelled expensive, and spoke very little. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what kind of life he lived. She didn't know that every time he looked at her, he was fighting with himself not to say something, not to ruin the peace she had. Because peace was rare in his world. He liked watching her from a distance, how she moved, how she talked to people with patience, how she smiled at strangers like kindness was easy for her. He hadn't known easy in a long time. After that 3rd visit, he left Rome for business. That's what he called it, business. But business, for a man like Lorenzo, meant blood. Meetings in dark rooms, decisions that didn't allow for weakness. He thought maybe distance would cure whatever was growing inside him. It didn't. Every night, he thought about her. Her laugh. Her hands. Her eyes. The peace she carried like light around her. One night, in a hotel room miles away, he sat on the edge of the bed with his phone in hand. He told himself not to do it. Then he did it anyway. He searched for her online. He found her pictures, her with friends, smiling wide, braids tied up in a bun. He found short videos where she was laughing, loud and full, unbothered by the world. That laugh hit him like a shot. He smiled without realizing, then frowned immediately after, like punishing himself for feeling something so human. Dio mio, he whispered. My God, he was falling, and he hated it. When he came back to Rome after a month away, he didn't even go home first. He drove straight to the boutique. The moment he stepped inside, the bell rang. Sharon looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes met his, and for a second, the room froze. He felt it again, that quiet inside his chest. She blinked, caught off guard, then smiled politely. How are you? He asked, voice low and steady. She smiled. Fine. And you? He looked at her for a moment that felt longer than it should have, then said softly, Good. He bought something small, paid, and left. No flirting, no lingering, just that quiet moment, the kind that says everything without a word. Later that night, he sat in his office, glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the city lights. He should have been thinking about business, about money, about control. But all he could think about was her smile. Across the city, Sharon lay in bed, scrolling her phone, thinking about him. She told herself, It's just a customer. She tried to forget the way his eyes lingered when he said good, but she couldn't. And she didn't know that somewhere in the city, the same man she was trying to forget couldn't stop thinking about her either. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. This woman, he said quietly to himself, she'll be my peace, or she'll be my ruin. He didn't know it yet, but it would be both. Sharon thought he was just a customer. That's what made this story dangerous. To her, Lorenzo was just this quiet, serious man who kept coming back to the boutique. He dressed clean, always in dark colors. He smelled like money and tobacco and something warm. He moved slow, controlled, like nothing could touch him. He bought clothes, paid full price, never asked for discount, never argued, never wasted time. That was all. That's what she told herself. But to him, every visit felt like walking into fire on purpose. After he came back to Rome from that month away, things started to shift. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. It was slow, quiet, dangerous. The first shift happened the day Sharon finally walked up to him. The store wasn't busy. Just soft music, racks of clothes, and the two of them. He was standing by the jackets, pretending to look, but really he was just trying to calm his heartbeat. Lorenzo never let anyone see his nerves. Nerves were weakness. Weakness got exploited. But around her, his pulse wasn't steady. It annoyed him. He was angry at himself for even feeling it. Sharon didn't know any of that. She walked over, hands together in front of her, sweet but professional. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. "How may I help you today?" Her voice was warm, respectful, not flirtatious. It wasn't, "Hey, handsome." It wasn't, "Hi, baby." She didn't play cheap games. She wasn't reaching for him. And that made him want her even more. He looked at her face, then lower, at her collarbone, the way her braids fell and brushed her skin. Then he looked back into her eyes. He stayed quiet for 3 long seconds. He didn't rush his answer. He let her feel his attention. He knew his presence was intense. Most people looked away, but Sharon didn't. She held his gaze back. That did something to him. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and calm. "You look beautiful today," he said. It wasn't casual. It wasn't playful. It was steady. It was a statement. Then he added, "I like your new hairstyle. Looks good on you, but thanks for trying to help. I'll be fine." She froze. Just for a second, he saw it. The way her breath caught. The way her mouth opened a little like she almost forgot what to say. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that. Not cheap, not disrespectful, not "damn girl" in the street. Number. This felt personal, close. Like his eyes weren't just looking at her beauty, but at her. Her cheeks warmed. She looked down, smiled, tucked one braid behind her ear to keep her hands busy. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, sir." She tried to laugh it off like it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Not for her, not for him. That moment stayed in both of their bodies for the rest of the day. That night, she went home to her small apartment and sat on the bed, her phone in her hand, just thinking. Why did he say that? Why did it feel different? Why did it feel serious? Her friend called her on video and asked, "Why are you smiling like that?" Sharon rolled her eyes, tried to play it small. "It's nothing. One of the customers just said, 'I looked beautiful today.'" That's all. Her friend raised an eyebrow. "Just a customer?" Sharon said. "Yeah. Just a customer." But the way she said it didn't even convince herself. The truth is, she felt something. She felt something she didn't have words for yet. Something heavy and warm in her chest. Something almost scary, because it had been a long time since someone made her feel seen. Not just, "You look good," seen. Meanwhile, Lorenzo was not fine. Lorenzo went home angry. He was angry because of how much he wanted her. He was angry because of how soft his voice went when he talked to her. He was angry because when he told her she was beautiful, it wasn't a line. It wasn't a move. It was just the truth. That scared him. Love, or anything like love, was a problem in his world. Love could be used against you. He knew this. He had seen it. He had lived it. You want to hurt a man like Lorenzo? You don't go after him. You go after what he cares about. You find his weak point. You touch that. That's how wars start. That's how people end up missing. So he told himself, "Don't do this. Don't fall for her. Don't get close. Don't drag her into what you are. Just watch her, want her, then walk away." That was the plan. But plans don't stand against feelings. The next time he walked in, he didn't even pretend to browse first. He went straight to her. For the first time, she felt it. That pull. That attention that wraps around you like heat. That feeling of, the whole room is full of people, but he's here for me. He didn't touch her. He didn't smile much. All he said was, "What time are you off?" That was it. 4 words. Her heart skipped. She swallowed. 8, she said, like she was still deciding if she should be honest with him. He nodded. "I'll be outside." Her body reacted before her mind did. "Why?" she asked. He held her eyes. "So you don't go home alone." Simple, direct, but the meaning was not simple. The meaning was this: you are mine to protect. Sharon felt warmth spread through her chest and into her stomach. Nobody had ever claimed her safety like that. Not in a controlling way, in a covering way. A way that said, "I'm here. You're not alone anymore." That night, at 8, she walked out of the boutique with her purse on her shoulder. And he was there, leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, watching the street, not looking at her first. Like he had been standing there forever. Like he'd been guarding her. That did something to her heart. They didn't go far that night. No club, no hotel, no drama. It wasn't like that. He just drove her home. And the whole ride, the car was silent, but not empty. She watched him drive, one hand on the wheel, jaw tight, eyes always moving, scanning mirrors, watching shadows, always alert. She noticed that he never relaxed, not for a second. She didn't know why, not yet. He dropped her in front of her building. "Text me when you're upstairs," he told her, voice serious. "So I know you're safe." She almost laughed. "Safe from what?" He looked at her, really looked. His eyes softened just a little. "Rome has sick people," he said. But Rome wasn't what he was worried about. He was worried about his world touching her. She didn't know that. Not yet. She went upstairs. She texted him, "I'm home." He stared at that message on his phone longer than he should have. Then he let himself breathe. That was how it started. After that, it became normal. He would show up at closing time. He would walk her to the car. He would drive. She would talk, and he would listen. She talked about music, childhood, small dreams. He talked less. But when he did talk, it was always honest. One night in the car, he said something that melted a wall inside her. He said, "When I'm with you, my head gets quiet." She felt that. That was not flirting. That was confession. Nobody had ever told her that she brought them peace. In that moment, something changed in her. She wasn't just interested. She wasn't just curious. She was in. Her body relaxed around him. Her guard dropped. She started to trust him with her softness, the part of herself she didn't show the world. And for Lorenzo, that was dangerous. Because now, it wasn't just attraction. It was attachment. That night, when she was about to get out of the car, she didn't move right away. She just sat there, looking at him, her hand still on the door handle, like she didn't want to leave yet. He turned his head toward her. Their eyes met. Nobody spoke. The air got thick. Her breathing got a little heavier. His gaze dropped, just for a second, to her lips. Then he pulled his eyes back up to hers. He didn't kiss her that night, but he wanted to. And she felt that he wanted to. That wanting sat between them like heat. It stayed with both of them even after she went upstairs, closed her door, leaned her back against it, and pressed her hand flat to her chest, because her heart would not calm down. And in his car, Lorenzo sat in the dark and whispered to himself, "What are you doing?" Because he knew this wasn't casual anymore. This was real. This was already dangerous. And if you're watching this right now, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. And if you've ever had a love that felt wrong, but still felt like the only thing you wanted, like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Because from here on, the story stops being sweet. From here on, love starts costing them. And it's about to cost them everything. The first time Lorenzo left, Sharon didn't understand why. She just woke up one morning, and he was gone. No message, no call, nothing. It was as if he'd disappeared from the face of the earth. One day, she was in his car, laughing, her hand on his arm, the sound of his deep voice filling her world. And the next day, silence. She called. The line went straight to voicemail. She texted. No reply. She waited. 1 day, 2 days, a week. Nothing. The confusion turned into anger, and the anger turned into pain. For a long time, Sharon tried to make sense of it. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he was out of town. Maybe something happened. But deep down, she knew. He had left. And it wasn't the first time she'd been abandoned by someone she trusted, but this one hit different. Because she had given him something she never gave anyone else. Her peace. While she cried into her pillow, while she stared at her phone hoping his name would appear, Lorenzo sat in the dark, whiskey glass in hand, phone on the table in front of him, ringing. He didn't pick it up. Every ring stabbed him, but he stayed still. He had to. He told himself this was the right thing to do. He told himself that keeping her away from him was the only way to keep her safe, because Lorenzo knew what he was. He wasn't just a man in love. He was a man whose name carried danger. And the people around him, the people who wanted what he had, would not think twice about using her to break him. He'd seen it before. He'd watched love turn into weakness, and weakness in his world was death. So he disappeared. He handled his business like he always did. Clean, quiet, effective. But this time, his hands shook after every deal. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, because no matter how far he went, he kept seeing her. Her face when she laughed. Her voice when she said his name. Her eyes the night she told him, "You make me feel safe." Safe. He laughed bitterly at that word now. Safe. He was the last man in the world who could offer that. Back in Rome, Sharon's friends told her, "He's not serious, babe. Move on. He's just playing with you. You're too good for that." But how do you move on from someone who felt like home? She tried. She went to work. She smiled at customers. She told herself she was fine. But every time the boutique door opened, her heart jumped. Every time the bell rang, she turned, hoping. It never was him. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. The ache became a part of her. Then, one late afternoon, it happened. She was leaving the cafe near her work, grocery bag in one hand, when she saw him, across the street. Lorenzo, standing beside his car, dark coat, tattoos peeking from under his sleeves, watching her. Her whole body froze. He looked the same, calm, strong, unreadable, but his eyes looked tired. He crossed the street slowly. People moved out of his way without knowing why. He stopped in front of her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them faded. Then, softly, he said her name. Sharon. Her lips parted. Her throat tightened. She didn't trust her voice, so she just shook her head. Once, twice, like she was trying to erase him. He stepped closer. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. "I didn't want to hurt you." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Then why did you?" she whispered. "Why did you leave me like that?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. He couldn't tell her the truth, not all of it. So he said the only thing he could say. "I didn't want you hurt." She laughed, bitter and broken. "Hurt?" she said. "You already did that." And right there, in the middle of the street, in daylight, she started crying. The sight of her tears hit him harder than any bullet ever could. He reached for her. She tried to step back, but he didn't let her. He pulled her in, held her tight, his hand on the back of her head, her face buried in his chest. He breathed her in, like he'd been holding his breath for months. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "I'm so sorry." She hit his chest once, weakly, then stopped fighting. Because as much as she wanted to hate him, her body didn't. Her heart didn't. In that moment, it didn't matter how much sense it didn't make. All that mattered was that he was there, and she could finally breathe again. They talked that night, for hours. He told her it would be different this time. He told her he wasn't going anywhere. He promised her she could trust him. And she believed him. Because she wanted to. They fell back into each other's lives like they had never been apart. Coffee dates, late-night drives, him holding her hand as they walked through Rome's quiet streets, her head on his shoulder, his thumb tracing slow circles on her skin. They laughed again. They loved again. And for a while, it was perfect. She didn't ask questions about where he went at night. He didn't tell her. Some truths were too dangerous to say out loud. But love made her forget to be careful. Love made her trust him blindly. Then one night, Lorenzo sat awake in bed, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, the kind of peaceful he would never have. And for the first time, he was terrified, because he knew this peace wouldn't last. He could feel it. The noise outside, the whispers, the attention. Someone had noticed her. His enemies were watching too closely, and Lorenzo had a choice. Keep her close and risk her life, or let her go again and break both of their hearts. He already knew which one he would choose. He didn't say goodbye this time. He just left. No text, no explanation, just gone. When Sharon woke up the next morning and found his side of the bed cold, she knew. He had done it again, but this time it hurt worse. Because this time, she had believed him when he said forever. She stood in the middle of the room, phone in her hand, tears running down her cheeks, and whispered, "You promised." But promises don't mean much in Lorenzo's world. He broke her heart, again, to save her life. At least, that's what he told himself. But as he drove away from her apartment, his hands on the wheel, his jaw clenched tight, he couldn't shake one thought. He was losing her for real this time. And even a ruthless man like him couldn't fight what that did to his soul. That's where love turns heavy. That's where passion becomes pain. That's where you start asking yourself, was it worth it? And for Lorenzo, the answer was always yes. Because he'd rather hurt himself than watch her bleed for his sins. When Lorenzo left for the second time, something inside Sharon broke. But not the same way it did before. The first time, she cried. She begged God to bring him back. She waited by the phone, checking it every few minutes. The second time, she went quiet. No screaming, no begging, just silence. Because silence was the sound of acceptance. She stood in her apartment that morning, the one he'd stayed in so many nights, the air still smelling faintly of his cologne, and said to herself, "This is it." She packed away the shirt he left behind. She folded the blanket he used when he slept on the couch that night they argued. She deleted his messages, but her hands shook the whole time. She whispered, "Enough." She said it again, louder this time. Enough. This time, she meant it. Weeks passed. She stopped checking the door every time a car slowed outside. She stopped waiting for his deep voice on the phone. She started walking home alone. Little by little, she rebuilt her peace. Her friends saw the change first. She was laughing again, eating again, showing up for herself again. And then one day, a man walked into her life. Not like Lorenzo, not dangerous, not intense. His name was Marco. He worked for a travel company, smiled easily, spoke gently. He didn't have tattoos. He didn't come with bodyguards. He didn't make the air around him heavy. When he looked at Sharon, he looked at her like she was sunlight. Not something to protect, not something to possess, but something to admire. It felt strange at first, too easy, too safe. But she told herself this was what she needed. A quiet love, a clean love. something without pain. So when Marco asked her out for coffee, she said yes. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled without guilt. The days turned into weeks, and Sharon tried to let herself believe that she was moving on. She laughed at his jokes. She held his hand in public. She started to feel lighter. But the truth? Her heart was never fully in it. Because no matter what she did, no matter how much she tried, Lorenzo was still there. In her memories, in her thoughts, in the way she compared every man's voice to his. She hated that. She hated that she still missed him after all the pain. But love doesn't switch off like a light. Love stays, even when it shouldn't. Then one evening, everything changed. Lorenzo found out. He was at a dinner with his men, half listening to their talk about money and territory, when one of them said it. "Boss, you remember that girl from the boutique?" Lorenzo didn't react. He just raised one eyebrow. "Which girl?" "The Nigerian one." Sharon, the air shifted. The man kept talking, too dumb to notice the danger he'd just stepped into. "I saw her yesterday near Piazza Navona. She was with some guy, holding hands. Looked happy." Lorenzo froze. His fingers stopped tapping the glass. His jaw flexed. He didn't say a word. But everyone at that table felt it. That drop in temperature, that thick silence before the storm. He didn't finish his drink. He just stood up, took his coat, and left. That night, he sat in his car outside her apartment building, watching the lights. He saw her window glowing warm. He saw shadows move. He saw her walk past the curtain, smiling, and it felt like his chest was being ripped open. Jealousy, pain, regret, all of it mixing inside him until he couldn't tell one from the other. He tried to breathe, but every breath hurt. "She's mine." The thought came uninvited. She's mine. But she wasn't. Not anymore. He had given her away when he left. He had taught her to stop waiting. And now, he couldn't stand the sight of her with someone else. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. His pulse pounded in his ears. He thought about walking away. He thought about leaving her alone, letting her be happy. He couldn't. He couldn't do it. He got out of the car. Sharon was about to make tea when she heard it. A knock on the door. Firm, strong, familiar. Her stomach dropped. Number. It couldn't be. She opened the door, and there he was. Lorenzo. Same eyes, same scent, same presence that filled the room before he even stepped inside. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she found her voice. "Are you crazy?" she said, anger and disbelief crashing together. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were sharp. "Do you think I'm your toy?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her. Really looked. "You can't just disappear and come back whenever you want," she shouted. "You can't keep playing with me like this." Her hands were shaking. She hated that. She hated that even now, even angry, her heart was still beating for him. He stepped closer. "Sharon," he said quietly, his voice deeper than she remembered. "Please, just listen." "No." She shook her head. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. You don't get to..." He stopped her with 3 words.
"Do you love him?"
The question hit her like a slap. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Do you love him?" he repeated, voice lower, rougher now. She tried to speak, but her throat closed. "Lorenzo, stop!" He stepped closer again, close enough that she could feel his breath on her skin. Her heart was racing so fast it hurt. "Tell me," he whispered. "Do you love him?" Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him to leave, but she couldn't, because the truth was sitting heavy in her chest, and the truth was no. No, she didn't love Marco. She wanted to, but she didn't. Her silence told him everything. Lorenzo reached out, grabbed her waist gently, pulled her close. "Stop, Lorenzo," she said, breathless now. "Please, stop." He didn't. He held her tighter, his hand sliding to the small of her back, his eyes never leaving hers. "Tell me to leave," he said. She didn't. Her hands were on his chest, not pushing, just resting there, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the same rhythm she thought she'd forgotten. He leaned in, and before either of them could stop it, their lips met. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't calm. It was everything. Anger, longing, love, hate, forgiveness, all in one breath. She clutched his shirt. He pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, years of pain and desire colliding like thunder. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. He rested his forehead against hers. "Don't marry him," he whispered. "Don't belong to anyone else." Tears slid down her face. "I hate you," she said, but her voice cracked. "I know," he answered. And then he kissed her again. For a few seconds, there was no past, no future, no danger. Just them, holding on, breathing the same air, trying to forget how impossible it all was. But deep down, they both knew this couldn't last. Because love that burns this hard always turns to smoke. And soon, the fire was going to consume them both. They stayed like that for a long time, pressed against each other, their hearts racing, breath heavy, the air between them thick with everything they couldn't say. The city outside kept moving. Cars passed. People talked. But inside that small apartment, time froze. Lorenzo's arms were around Sharon, strong, desperate, as if letting go would make her disappear again. And she wasn't fighting anymore. Her fingers clutched the fabric of his shirt, anchoring herself to him like she was afraid the world would end if she didn't. For a few moments, there was no pain, no past, no anger, only love, raw, broken, real. But peace doesn't last long in their kind of story. When they finally pulled apart, the silence hit harder than any words could. Sharon took a small step back, her chest rising and falling. Her face was wet with tears. "You don't get to do this," she whispered, voice shaking. "You don't get to walk in here, turn my life upside down, and make me feel like this again." Lorenzo looked down, jaw tight, eyes dark. He wanted to tell her everything, about the danger, about the threats, about the people who watched him, about why he kept leaving. But how do you explain a world like his to someone like her? How do you tell the person you love that being near you could get them killed? So instead, he said nothing. He just stood there, looking at the only person who ever made him feel alive. Sharon's voice broke the silence again. "Do you think I'm just supposed to wait for you forever?" Her tone was low, trembling with anger and heartbreak. "You leave, you come back, you disappear again. And I'm supposed to just keep forgiving you?" He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "You're selfish, Lorenzo," she said, tears spilling again. "You say you love me, but you don't even trust me enough to tell me what's going on." He took a slow breath. "You wouldn't understand," he said softly. Her eyes flashed. "Then make me understand." He looked at her. This woman who wasn't afraid to stand up to him. This woman who had no idea the kind of men he dealt with. Who had no idea that just being seen with him put her life in danger. He wanted to protect her. He always did. But he could see now, protecting her meant destroying her. He reached out, touched her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "I wish I could explain," he said, voice rough, almost breaking. I wish I could give you the kind of love you deserve. But I'm not that man, Sharon. I live in a world that can't touch yours. She shook her head. I don't care about your world. I care about you. He smiled, a small, sad smile. And that's the problem. The sound of his phone buzzing broke the silence. He looked at it once. The name flashing on the screen made his stomach twist. Trouble. He knew that tone, that timing. He silenced it, but Sharon had already seen his face change. Work? She asked quietly. He nodded once. She laughed, dry and tired. Of course. He stepped closer, but she moved back. Don't, she said softly. Don't touch me. Not if you're just going to leave again. He stopped. The space between them suddenly felt wider than ever. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. His voice was low, calm, steady, but inside, he was breaking. Then why do you keep doing it? She whispered. He didn't answer, because the truth wouldn't make it better. If he told her the truth, that people had followed her once, that he'd gotten a call with her name in a threat, that she'd almost been caught in something meant for him, she'd never sleep again. So, he said nothing. He just looked at her like he was memorizing her face one last time. Her lips parted like she wanted to tell him to stay, but she didn't. She knew better now. He reached for her hand. She let him hold it, just once more. Their fingers fit together perfectly. Always had. He lifted her hand, kissed it, then pressed it to his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady but heavy. Every time I walk away from you, he said softly, I feel like I'm cutting pieces of myself off. But if I stay, I'll bring my world into yours, and you don't deserve that pain. Sharon's tears came again, quiet, helpless, angry. She shook her head. You already brought pain, Lorenzo. The difference is, when you're gone, it doesn't stop hurting. Her words hit him like bullets. He wanted to argue, to promise her that this time would be different, but it would be a lie. Because he knew, men like him don't get to keep the good things they find. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. For a moment, neither of them breathed. It felt like the whole world stopped moving. Then he whispered, If I could come back as someone else, I'd come back as the man you deserve. And before she could answer, he kissed her. Slow, soft, final. This one wasn't wild like before. It wasn't angry. It was goodbye. When he pulled away, she didn't open her eyes. She didn't want to see him leave again. He turned, walked to the door, and paused. His voice was barely a whisper. I'll love you until the day I stop breathing. The door closed. The echo stayed. Days turned into weeks again. This time, Sharon didn't wait. She didn't chase him. She just lived. But there were nights she'd wake up, reach for the space beside her bed, and find it empty. And the ache would return. She knew he loved her. She knew he had his reasons. But love without presence feels like grief. So, she let herself grieve. She let herself cry. And little by little, she learned to breathe again. Somewhere in Rome, Lorenzo watched her from a distance. He saw her one afternoon, walking out of that same cafe, the wind catching her braids, her smile returning. He didn't approach her. He didn't call her name. He just stood there, proud, hurting, alive. He whispered, Be happy, amore. Then he turned and walked away. Months later, rumors spread in the city. A deal went wrong. A name disappeared. A body was never found. Some say Lorenzo vanished to start over. Some say he died that night. No one really knows. But Sharon, sometimes she still feels him. When she walks through the streets of Rome at sunset, when the breeze is warm, when the city goes quiet, she swears she can hear him whisper her name. And when she closes her eyes, she still remembers his voice saying, "When I'm with you, my head gets quiet." Maybe that's all love ever is. Two people who make each other quiet in a world full of noise, even if they can't stay together. Thank you for watching Love and Danger. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about love, loss, and life. And wherever you are watching from, Rome, Lagos, New York, London, anywhere in the world, remember, some loves never die. They just live quietly in the spaces between memories.